talking about Canada, the United States, an election north of the border, and its implications and how it happened. I'm privileged to be joined by Andrew Cohen, author, journalist, professor. Andrew, this is certainly a of course, even fans coming in, our Canadian fans applauding right now. Andrew, this is an election that one could not have predicted, let's say, even at the beginning of 2025. Is that not right?
Absolutely, Michael. This is what has happened in Canada in our history, Canada's history, 157 years, is unprecedented. 4 months ago, 3 months ago, the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, a young, dynamic, somewhat demagogic figure in Canada, was leading the polls by 20 and 25% when he faced Justin Trudeau, who had been or was then Prime Minister of Canada for the last 9.5 years. Justin Trudeau left in January, and Donald Trump arrived. And at the same time, the Liberal Party chose a new leader by the name of Mark Carney. Mark Carney became Prime Minister in March. Mark Carney, having won the Liberal Party leadership with 84% of the vote, that too unprecedented. And tonight, Michael, the election has not, we don't know every district in Canada. We call them ridings here. We don't know every district, but the networks have projected that the Liberals will be reelected for a fourth consecutive term. Michael, this rarely happens in Canada. And more than that, Mark Carney has not been elected to anything before. He's, in that sense, something he shares with Donald Trump. So Mark Carney, economist, financier, former governor of the Bank of England, former governor of the Bank of Canada, that's like our Federal Reserve, international economist, has just been now reelected or elected prime minister. The only question now is whether he gets a majority in the House of Commons, which will allow him to govern with a free hand, or a minority. Right now, they're moving toward a majority, but we won't know that for a little while longer.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary, and I'm not being glib about this. That his victory, he can thank one person for this victory. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Donald Trump will be toasted tonight throughout Liberal Party circles and otherwise, because without Donald Trump threatening to make Canada the 51st state, Donald Trump calling Justin Trudeau governor, he didn't do that to the Bank of Canada former governor Mike Carney, which would have been okay because that was his former title. But even yesterday, or even today, the president mentioned once again the advantages of being of Canada electing him. That is Donald Trump. So we are in a situation we've never been before in Canada with an unelected prime minister. But the feeling is, Michael, here today, this is a meeting of the man in the moment. This is someone who entered politics in January, won the leadership of his party, or the nomination, so to speak, in March, has spent 37 days. Our campaigns are very fast in Canada, only 5 weeks, and who had never again been elected to anything before, never sat a day in the Parliament of Canada or a provincial legislature or dog catcher on a city council, none of that, and brings this extraordinary resume, projected confidence, authority to Canadians, and apparently tonight is on his way to a majority government with a big share of the popular vote.
Yeah, I don't know that there is an analog. Certainly, in all the years that I've covered politics, I cannot think of an analog to this, where something happened from outside of the boundaries of the country to elevate somebody who has never before been elected to anything. I don't know that exists in modern politics, and you've written extensively on politics both here in the United States, where you covered it, and in Canada. Can you think of anything that can compare to this?
No, I mean, in terms of a politician coming from nowhere, well, not nowhere, but ascending to the top job, this is like
Yeah.
Donald Trump in 2016. Donald Trump had not been elected to anything either. I mean, that's where the comparison begins and ends. They are very different people. But I do think that they've had one conversation, and the president, after that conversation, was not as adversarial or antagonistic toward Canada in the way he had been under Justin Trudeau, whom people here believe the president did not respect very much. Although Justin Trudeau had won 3 elections. In Canada, we have no term limits. You can keep
Right.
running. And so, were we to become the 51st state and Donald Trump were to run in Canada, he could be reelected here over and over again because we
Right.
don't have term limits.
Yeah,
That's
don't tell him we don't have term limits down here, because he's already printing the
close to that.
caps. So
He's
yeah.
pushing that. But Michael, something else that it is important tonight. Canada's elected a progressive government at a time in the world, in France, in Italy, in the United States, in Germany, where the right has risen. The right has not risen in Canada. This is a centrist, moderate country, 41 million people, just about the size of California in population. Not a small country, the second largest in the world, with its own way of doing things. And this is not a conservative government. The predictions had been, when the Conservatives were leading, that Canada would veer right, the way so many countries have. And tonight's result does not say that. And so, many of us expect Mark Carney to assume a leadership role because of that in the G7, which is being hosted by Canada, by the way, here in June, and in other ways as well.
That's a really interesting take that I also want to challenge a little bit, because what I hear in that is that, were it not for Donald Trump, Canada would probably have gone to the right, whether it was Trudeau fatigue, whether it was actual issues that has the country, a moderate country, like you said, veering a little bit to the right, or it's a little bit of a taste that we got during those the trucker event a few years ago, where the truck convoys were there, and you saw a lot of right-wing Canada come out. So, were it not for Donald Trump, actually, don't you think there's a chance that we would be having a very different conversation about the direction that Canada took, which makes this a little bit anomalous? No.
Yes, that's fair. Had Donald Trump not emerged, not arrived as he did in January, and Justin Trudeau left in January, things might be different. But as we know, in your country, elections, great swings of ideology can happen with very few votes. I mean, as we know, in your country, United States, the popular vote, electoral college was different, but the popular vote was only 49 something to 48 something, and there was
Yeah.
a point and a half that separated Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Electoral college was different, and look at the direction your country has taken. Had it been Kamala Harris, it would have been a different direction. So,
No
you're right,
question.
though. Donald Trump, Mark Carney owes, and it might be that Donald Trump wants to collect on this, but owes his political success to Donald Trump in the way that, and I do think that Donald Trump actually may like Mark Carney. It's not that Mark Carney is not going to challenge the president on some of this, some of the noise coming out of Washington, some of the
Yeah.
trolling, we would call it. But I do think he'll respect Mark Carney because he's made his bones in international finance. He knows money. He knows the bond market and treasury bills and the markets. And as he says, I know how the world works. And that's why Canadians have embraced him in a way, as you say, Mark, unthinkable 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, a little bit of this campaign too that has trickled over the border is about the fun that Mark Carney's having. He's skating with the Edmonton Oilers. He's against the boards with Mike Myers, who a celebrity here, an expat of Canada who makes his home here in the United States. How much of that has worked to his favor in terms of forgetting Donald Trump? How much of what he's done as a candidate since he's been elevated by all of this is Canada responding to?
Well, rare in election campaigns do people become more popular as the campaign goes on.
Yeah.
And if you look at the trajectory of Mark Carney, now it's true, Canadians barely knew him when the election was called. And that was one of the reasons the Liberals wanted to call. They wanted to be able to define Mark Carney. But people like Mark Carney. He is considered smart, confident, authoritative, and yet has a level of humility about him, a level of charm. Those videos you talk about, or those situations, went viral. It's not just that. He was making matzo balls the other day for Passover in a kitchen with an apron. I don't think I'd want to taste them, but nonetheless, he showed an ability to make them, and this is all to humanize him.
Yeah.
And but don't misunderstand. This guy is extraordinary. He happens to be my neighbor. This is a small society we live in, and I know him, so I have
Yeah.
a bit of a bias. But this is someone with an international resume. This is somebody who arrived to do the job he thought needed to be done. And I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that given what Canada faces and the kind of um, negotiations we are going to have with your country and others, because foremost on his list is trying to diversify our trade, which goes overwhelmingly to the United States.
Yeah.
And if the president is saying that he wants to keep imposing tariffs on us, well, we need to find different trading partners. Mark Carney is the person who can do that.
Yeah, one of the real traps of these tariffs that a lot of economists, and I'm not one, by the way, so I don't want to speak with any expertise on this, have said is that this is going to force a lot of our trading partners into better deals with other countries that they hadn't previously dealt with, and they're probably not going to run back to the United States once they have those deals in place, whether we have a change in administration or a change in posture. And Canada is always the sort of the number one country that people talk about when they refer to this sort of dynamic coming out of these tariffs.
Well, our challenge is a little bit harder than a European or an Asian nation. We send 78, 79% of what we make. And, you know, the oil and gas we take from the ground and the minerals but also what we make, cars and other manufacturing, we send it to the United States. And Michael, it's been a lot easier for Canadian business in the life of our two countries to trade across the street, and
Of
it is
course.
across the street, than to trade across the ocean. So diversifying our economy is a very big challenge, a very
Yeah.
big challenge. You know, we don't have oil pipelines that go under the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean to those markets. It has to go by tanker. It's light liquefied natural gas, but it will not be easy for us. One of the other things Mark Carney is trying to do, or says he'll try and do, is make for a more integrated internal economy. We are 10 provinces and 13 territories in Canada, all of which have different markets, and we don't trade well with each other. And we now realize that we are going to have to drop those barriers, and so that if you make a bottle of wine in British Columbia, which they say is as good as your wine in California, and want
Yeah.
to sell it in Ontario, that you're not going to be tariffed, so to speak, internally by Ontario wanting to keep that out. That's going to change now, and that will help us as well. But this is a moment, Michael, for a country where people have loved the United States. Many of us have spent our lives in the United States. We are your best friend, whether you know it or not. We say here often,
Yeah.
and so it's an extraordinary position to be in, where we seem to be at odds with our American friends and looking for those markets so that we can make our way in the world and continue to be a prosperous, um, affluent place, which we are, like you.
Yeah.
And so, but we have, because we've traded with you, and now we're going to have to find ways of trading with other people. It will not be easy for us.
And not to mention, I think it's not just affected Canadians in the way and how they think about Americans, but it's certainly created a lot of love for Canada that would not have happened in the United States so spontaneously were it not for the positions that Trump was taking. I mean, the people are talking about how much they love Canada. They're buying and selling hats with the maple leaf on them, and it's probably in the long term a good thing for these sort of intra-nation relationships that could happen between the two countries. Let me ask you a couple of things before we let you go, but I mean, this conversation I could have all night because it's so fascinating for a political nerd like I am, and I'll put that on you too, because I believe you are as well, to see an American president impact an election in a way that it turned it completely around, and the party that you would tend to believe he would not be in favor of would be
True.
winning. I want to ask a couple of things. First of all, when you talk about Mark Carney coming from virtual anonymity, he was named to be this interim prime minister. What was it about him that, and was it Trudeau who named him? But what was it about him that said, "Oh, this is the guy"? Or is it, I mean, because here we have primary elections that go on forever and ever, so you do get a Jimmy Carter and you get a Barack Obama who catches fire out of nowhere, who had very little experience. But it seemed like they were trying to tilt the playing field a little bit here.
Well, he didn't come out of nowhere, in the sense that Mark Carney, as I say, had made his career in Canada. He had been the governor of the Bank of Canada. That is the equivalent, as I say, of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Before that, he'd worked for Goldman Sachs in New York, Toronto, Tokyo, and London in international finance.
Right.
Then he comes back to Canada. He does after being abroad, and he goes to the Bank of England. I've already said that. He came back to Canada to run a big asset company called Brookfield. In the last 5 years, Mark Carney has made it known that he was interested in being prime minister, not unlike Donald Trump making it known before 2016 that he wanted to be president. And
Right.
so when Justin Trudeau resigned, the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada, the Liberal Party is one of the perhaps most successful political organizations in the world. It has been in power in Canada for something like 95 of the last 157 years.
Right.
And the reason it does that is the ability to pivot. It saw in Mark Carney somebody from the outside, somebody with international chops, in a sense, as an economist. And it declared it ran a very quick leadership convention, not unlike the nominating conventions of the Democratic and Republican parties, except, as you say, there were no primaries. There were other candidates. He won 84% of the vote. So the Liberal Party chose him as its leader. He became, on our system, prime minister. He didn't have a mandate. He went to the Governor General, that's our head of state, acting head of state, and said, I'd like you to dissolve Parliament. I'm calling an election. In Canada, you can call an election. He didn't waste any time. And so within 37 days, we move pretty quickly here in our system, and we're actually very happy we do. It's not, it isn't drawn out. Money doesn't play a big role in it. Outside third parties don't play, that is third intervening parties don't play much role. We worried about this.
There are no PACs.
No, there are no PACs. We're very simple people that way. There's a limit on what you can give. It's very little. It's $5,000 per person. So it's not a lot really. And it's deductible, of course. So, but Canadians saw in Mark Carney, and the Liberal Party saw in Mark Carney, the right man at the right time in the right place. And Donald Trump helped it become that. As we've said, it might have been entirely different. It might have been somebody else, and that person tonight would have lost in a landslide to Pierre Poilievre, who is very Trump-like in the sense that he talks about Canada being broken, and he talked about he wanted to fire the head of the Bank of Canada. He aligned himself with anti-democratic forces in Canada. We had a big trucking, 3 years ago, and he was all in for that. So that's what Canadians rejected tonight. And you're right, it could have gone the other way. It easily could have gone the other way. And so this is an unprecedented victory, which will have international repercussions, because I think Mark Carney will emerge very quickly through the strength of character and his resume. He will emerge very quickly in the G7. And as it happens, I was just saying earlier, we are hosting that G7 meeting in Alberta in June. The president, I assume he's still going to come. He talks about having Vladimir Putin. I don't think that's going to happen. But I expect Mark Carney, who will be the least experienced person at the G7, I expect him very quickly to assume the authority of a leader. And I think that will happen.
It's believable. What now happens to Poilievre? Where does his...
Well, that's a very interesting question. So he's leader of the opposition and a very effective leader of the opposition. The trouble is, when you run for the leader of opposition, you usually get the job. And so tonight he essentially ran for that job and not prime ministry. We don't know. There was a big challenge in his district, his riding, as we call it. We don't know the result of that. If he loses that, he's gone. He will not have a seat in Parliament. The big question will be the size of the Liberal win. Will it be I believe it'll be a majority. Will it be a big majority, a small majority? And will his party turn on him, as we see everywhere, whether it's Democrats turning on themselves? There's nothing like losing to, as you know, as Democrats know, or Republicans, there's nothing like losing to lose confidence and to turn on each other. So his future is uncertain. Again, it will depend on the numbers.
Yeah. When you talk about the different ridings and districts and everything, we're so accustomed to red states and blue states here in the United States that, you won't really have a Democratic presidential candidate campaigning in the South anymore. Very rare to see that in Georgia, of course, but not in Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, those places. Is it that defined in Canada? I mean, I'm asking this because I don't know the answer to it. I'm very curious about it. I mean, do you know that? Oh well, you're not going to win Alberta if you're X, and you're not going to win Quebec if you're Y. Is it as clearly
Michael,
defined?
you just answered your own question.
Yeah.
Alberta tends to be heavily conservative. We're going to await results we're going to wait results to see if there was a liberal breakthrough in Alberta. It was pushing 30% of the vote there, which might yield some seats for it, but they have 4 there now. They might get some more. Saskatchewan, the province next to it,
Yeah.
also is not friendly to the Liberal Party, but they don't have a lot of people, those 2 places. The,
Right.
the Canada, 80% of Canada's urban, and much of that is in eastern and central Canada.
Right.
Toronto, Montreal are the most. Well, Ontario has about 15 million people. Quebec has about 7 million people or more. That's a lot of people. And British Columbia, though, is evenly split. That's our most westerly province, just north of state of Washington, Oregon. So there are places, but Quebec tends to favor the Liberal Party. Ontario tends to favor the Liberal Party, though Conservatives can do well there. They aren't tonight. Atlantic Canada, our 4 provinces in the east, were very strongly Liberal tonight. So we don't have red and blue states, but we do have places where you're going to do better than other places. And you called it right. Alberta is heavily conservative tonight. Quebec is heavily liberal.
By the way, that was just a happy accident. I pulled 2 provinces out and went with them. So
Well,
I'm
you're a
glad
political nerd.
glad,
You sensed it.
glad I got lucky. Tell me, define for our audience here what is meant by elbows up.
Elbows up is the new mantra, the new rallying cry in Canada. Elbows up is a hockey term, and this is a hockey country. And elbows up simply means that you're not going to be pushed around. It's a defensive crouch, and it means don't mess with me. Don't mess with me because we've been around. This country's been around since 1867 and far earlier. We fought wars with you, with the United States. We were with you in World War One, with you in World War Two, with you in Korea, with you in the Gulf. We've been a good international citizen. We're small. We've made our way in the world in a very harsh and forbidding climate. We don't have California's climate in Canada or Florida's. You can't grow a lot of things in Canada. I mean, we grow wheat, but we don't have the great fertile plains that you do. So we've had to, against the threat of the United States, historically, not like today, but historically, the United States has made noises about absorbing Canada. Nothing like today. We've managed to survive, and Canadians are very proud of that. Where our democracy is over 150 years old, and it looks very much like it did in 1867. It didn't go through France went through 5 republicans, Germany went through 3 Reichs, and the United States has gone through several constitutional amendments. But we look pretty much the way we did before. And so Canadians are very proud. This will never be the 51st state. Donald Trump may or may not want to recognize that. And Canadians are angry in a way I've not seen them, angry, united, and anxious in a way I've not seen them in covering politics over 47 years. I've never seen this. And so tonight was a reflection of where Canadians are, and it was an embracing Mark Carney, the Liberal Party, very much a rejection of Donald Trump and the kind of things he's saying about Canada.
Yeah, you wrote a book. You've written several, but one of them was "While Canada Slept: How We Lost Our Place in the World." Tonight might have been the night where Canada finds its place in the world
And
unexpectedly.
awoke, and awoke,
And
because
awoke. Yeah,
because one of the things we have to do, actually, and both the Conservatives and the Liberals promise this, is that we are not spending enough on national defense. And the president says this to us all the time. He's actually right in that. I mean, we are not carrying our weight in NATO, and we will do that. We are committed to that. But we've been something of a free rider in defense. We share continental defense with the United States, and that hasn't bothered presidents before President Trump, but it does him. So that's where we are. But elbows up is really a reflexive defensiveness leading to a certain belligerence among Canadians now in reaction to where we are. You said something about Americans wearing hats. Canadians are the ones always accused of apologizing. And
Yeah.
yet, I have many friends in the United States where I spend part of my year on an island off the coast of Maine. They're the ones apologizing to me. I'm sorry, Andrew, for what we're saying about you. We like you, and you're a part of our community, as we have American friends here who are part of our community. And so the apologies are largely coming from Americans to Canadians rather than Canadians to Americans.
Right, and then hearing sorry is something that we're so used to. It's all right to say sorry to you guys. So yeah, that's fine. Andrew Cohen, you can go to andrewzcohen.com. You can sign up, I believe, for a newsletter there. Is
Yes.
that active? And
Thank you, Michael.
and yeah, of course. No, this has been enlightening. This has been fun, and it's exciting to talk about Canada and Canadian politics being relevant both here and abroad once again. So that's a really exciting thing to have happen. A privilege to talk with you, and we'll visit with you and see how things are going as Canada wakes up.
I would love that, and it's been an honor to appear. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.